This boy had no money, no plan, no idea how he would survive the next day. While the city rushed past him chasing jobs and dreams, he sat on a cold sidewalk with nothing but tired eyes and empty pockets. And standing beside him was something the world had already forgotten. A hungry, injured stray dog. People walked by. Some looked away. Some didn't look at all. But this boy stopped. There was no camera. No hope of going viral. No one to clap or cheer. Just one choice, walk away or care. He broke his last piece of bread in half and placed it in front of the dog. That single moment didn't look important, but it quietly changed everything. Today, people call this boy successful. They see his income. They watch his videos. They ask how he made it. What they don't see is this. His success didn't start with money, education, or luck. It started with a stray dog no one wanted. And the story you're about to hear isn't just about rescuing an animal. It's about how saving one life can completely rewrite another. Because sometimes, when you rescue a dog, you end up rescuing yourself. The city never seemed to sleep, but to Arib, it felt like it was always against him. Every street corner, every neon sign, every hurried passerby reminded him of one thing: how small, powerless, and invisible he truly was. At just 17, he carried more worries than most men twice his age. He had no money, no family to lean on, and no plan for the next day. The future was a shadow he couldn't reach, and every morning he woke to the same cold truth. Survival was a gamble, and he was losing. That evening, Arib sat on the cracked concrete sidewalk, hunched over, watching the traffic blur past him. His stomach growled, reminding him of the single meal he had skipped to save a few coins. His hands were raw and calloused from endless odd jobs he could barely get. Life had taught him that no one cared about the weak. No one cared about the poor. And tonight he felt it more than ever. Then he heard it. A faint whimper from the alley beside him. He looked up, scanning the dim light. There it was, a small, trembling dog, white with patches of dirt and blood, struggling to stand. Its legs seemed injured, and it shivered violently under the cold drizzle. The world ignored it, as it had ignored him countless times. Cars passed by, people whispered, and some even kicked the dirt near the dog to shoo it away. Arib froze. Something in that dog's eyes, pure fear but also trust, longing and desperation, struck a chord in him. He could relate. Here was another living being, unwanted, struggling, abandoned, yet still fighting to survive. He glanced at his empty hands and empty stomach and knew that helping it would make his own life harder, not easier. But still, something inside him refused to walk away. He slowly reached into his bag and pulled out the small piece of bread he had been saving. His hands trembled as he tore it in half. The dog backed away, uncertain, its eyes fixed on him. Arib whispered softly, "It's okay. It's okay. I won't hurt you." Slowly, the dog inched closer, sniffed the bread, and took it. The relief on its face was instantaneous, and in that moment, something clicked in Arib too. This wasn't just a dog. This was hope. And in a life where hope was rare, fragile, and easily lost, he held onto it fiercely. That night, he made a decision. He would take the dog with him. He would care for it, even if it meant going hungry, even if it meant sleeping in the cold with nothing to show for it. Because sometimes survival wasn't just about keeping oneself alive. It was about keeping someone else alive too. As the rain fell harder, Arib wrapped the dog in his jacket and held it close. He didn't know where they would sleep or what tomorrow would bring. But for the first time in months, a spark of purpose ignited inside him. He didn't see a stray dog. He saw a companion, a reason, a future that was waiting to be built, not with money or power, but with loyalty, kindness, and courage. Hours passed. Arib walked aimlessly, holding the dog, his mind racing with questions. How would he feed it? Where would they stay? Would people scold him for being foolish? But every fear was met with a single, undeniable truth. He couldn't turn away. He had chosen. And once a choice is made, you have to see it through. That night, as Arib sat under a broken awning, the dog curled up in his lap, he realized something profound. The impossible choice, saving another life while barely able to save his own, was not weakness. It was the start of something greater. Every great story began with a choice, and for Arib, this was his first step. The city around them seemed indifferent, but inside him, a new story was quietly, stubbornly unfolding. And as the dog closed its eyes, finally at peace, Arib whispered, "We'll make it. Somehow." He didn't know how, but for the first time, he believed it. The first week with the dog, whom Arab had named Buddy, felt like both a blessing and a curse. Buddy's eyes followed him everywhere, filled with unwavering trust. But that trust came with responsibility. Arib barely had enough money for himself, and now there was another living creature to feed, to protect, to care for. Each coin he earned seemed to vanish as soon as it entered his pocket, and nights grew colder when he realized that survival was no longer just about him. It was about two lives now. Days blurred into a painful routine. Arib woke at dawn to clean streets, carrying parcels, running errands, and doing odd jobs wherever he could. Sometimes the work paid only a few coins. Sometimes he returned empty-handed. But he walked beside him, shivering through rain and cold, never complaining, never leaving. But Arib could feel the weight of his own helplessness growing. The people around him didn't notice. They didn't care. And most nights he would collapse on the floor of some abandoned shed. Buddy pressed against him and quietly cry. Food became the biggest struggle. Breadcrumbs and leftover scraps were no longer enough. Arib's stomach grumbled constantly, and Buddy's soft whines became a haunting reminder of their shared suffering. There were moments when he thought of leaving the dog behind. Maybe someone else will help you," he whispered into the dark. But every time he looked into Buddy's eyes, and something in him refused. How could he abandon a life that depended entirely on him? How could he walk away from trust so pure? Money wasn't the only challenge. People mocked him, calling him foolish. "You can't even feed yourself and you're trying to feed a dog?" they sneered. Strangers pushed past him, ignoring both of them, while others shook their heads in silent judgment. Every day, no matter how exhausted or hungry, he shared what little he had with Buddy. Even when he went without food, he made sure Buddy ate first. The nights were the hardest. They curled together on the cold concrete or under leaky awnings, rain dripping onto their heads. Arab would stare at the cracked ceiling and think about what the future could hold, if any. Every time his mind wandered to despair, Buddy nudged him with his nose or rested a paw on his chest as if to say, "We're in this together. Don't give up." It was a small gesture, but it carried enormous weight. Then came the unexpected, cruel twist. Arib fell sick from exhaustion and hunger. He couldn't go out to work and his body ached with fever. Buddy stayed by his side, refusing to move, whimpering softly. For the first time, Arib realized that this responsibility was bigger than he could handle alone. But he also realized something else. Buddy wasn't a burden. Buddy was teaching him resilience, patience, and courage. Every struggle, every sleepless night, every hungry day was molding him, preparing him for something bigger. One night, as the city lights flickered faintly through the mist, Arib whispered to Buddy, "I don't know how we'll make it, but I won't give up. Not you, not me. We'll survive this together." The dog wagged his tail softly as if understanding every word. And at that moment, a quiet determination settled in Arab's chest. The struggle wasn't over. In fact, it was just beginning. But he wasn't afraid anymore. Despite the exhaustion, the hunger, and the scorn of the world, Arib learned a hard truth. Sometimes the path to success is paved with pain. Sometimes the hardest part of survival isn't the world outside. It's keeping hope alive inside yourself. Buddy had shown him that. Even in the darkest moments, loyalty and trust could keep one moving forward. And even though tomorrow promised more struggle, Arib felt a strange sense of calm. They were in it together, and for the first time that felt like enough. The weeks of struggle began to show subtle, almost invisible signs of change. Arib and Buddy had settled into a rhythm. Mornings were spent scavenging for work, afternoons were filled with deliveries and errands, and nights were a quiet battle against hunger and cold. Life was still hard, but there was a strange rhythm to it now, an understanding between a boy and his dog that transcended the harshness of the world. Buddy had become Arib's shadow, following his every step with loyalty that was impossible to ignore. One drizzly afternoon, Arib carried a heavy load of crates down a narrow alley when a stranger paused to watch. The man, curious at first, noticed Buddy waddling alongside him, muddy paws and all. He smiled faintly, amused, but also intrigued. Something about the sight. A boy barely older than a teenager, exhausted but determined, caring for a stray, caught the stranger's attention. Later that day, Arib found himself sitting on a street corner, Buddy curled up beside him, exhausted from the day's labor. He noticed people looking, not glaring, not mocking, but staring. A young woman took out her phone and recorded a short video of the pair. The boy sharing his last bite of food, Buddy nuzzling him gratefully, the rain falling around them. She posted it online with a simple caption, "A boy and his dog surviving together." At first, nothing happened. Days passed. But then views began to trickle in. Comments appeared, curious and empathetic. Strangers reached out, offering help, asking where they could support the boy and his dog. For the first time in his life, Arib realized that the world was noticing him. Not for fame, not for money, but for something raw, something real. Suddenly, their struggles didn't seem invisible anymore. Every act of kindness, every sacrifice, every night spent shivering on the streets was now being witnessed, recorded, and shared. People started leaving small offerings of food near him. Coins dropped in his path. Words of encouragement whispered from passing strangers. For the first time, Arib felt that perhaps his struggle could have a purpose beyond survival. And yet, with attention came a strange new pressure. The video spread slowly at first, then faster. Comments, likes, and shares multiplied. Some messages were heartwarming, others critical. "Oh, why are you doing this? Are you exploiting the dog?" someone asked. But Arib didn't falter. He knew his intentions. Buddy wasn't a tool. Buddy was his partner, his reason for waking up every morning, his reminder that life could still hold meaning even amidst hardship. Opportunities started appearing, almost magically. One day, a small local charity reached out, offering basic supplies for the boy and the dog. Another day, a man with a camera proposed making a short documentary about them. Each interaction, each gesture of recognition was small but significant, a lifeline thrown into their stormy existence. Arib began to understand that attention, once feared, could be transformed into opportunity if approached with care and integrity. Through it all, Buddy remained the constant. He never demanded recognition, never sought praise. He wagged his tail, leaned against Arib when he was tired, and offered companionship that no amount of money could buy. It was Buddy who taught Arib patience as strangers gawked, taught him humility as donations trickled in, and taught him hope as the world began to notice their story. One evening, as the sun set and cast a warm glow over the alley, Arib sat cross-legged with Buddy on his lap, scrolling through the messages on a borrowed phone. Thousands of views, hundreds of comments, dozens of donations. Strangers had become witnesses to their life, their struggle, and their perseverance. Arib looked at Buddy, his silent partner in survival, and whispered, "We're not invisible anymore, thanks to you." That night, Arib finally felt a spark of something he hadn't felt in months. Possibility. The world had begun to notice, but more importantly, he had begun to believe that maybe, just maybe, their struggle could transform into something bigger than hardship. And in the quiet of that alley, under the dim glow of a flickering street lamp, a subtle shift occurred. For the first time, Arib no longer felt entirely alone in the world. The attention Arib and Buddy received changed the rhythm of their days. Life, once a blur of survival and despair, began to reveal glimpses of opportunity. It wasn't instant or magical. Nothing in Arib's life ever came without struggle, but for the first time, he could see the faint outlines of a future that wasn't just about surviving, but thriving. The short video that had captured a passerby's attention weeks ago finally gained momentum online. Views multiplied, comments poured in, and donations arrived from people he had never met. Some sent food, some sent money, and others left heartfelt messages of encouragement. It was strange, almost surreal, for a boy who had lived unnoticed for so long. Suddenly, the world was watching him, not as a struggling teenager, but as someone with a story worth following. One afternoon, a small local organization reached out. They offered to cover Buddy's medical treatment, provide food for both of them, and even suggested training sessions to help Buddy stay healthy. Arib could hardly believe it. The boy who had walked streets with nothing but a broken backpack and a trembling dog now found strangers willing to help them thrive. He realized that sometimes kindness begets kindness, and even the smallest act of love could ripple far beyond what one could imagine. Encouraged by this support, Arib began to explore ways to share their story more widely. He started recording short clips, simple moments of him and Buddy, sharing meals, walking together, playful interactions, and the quiet nights when Buddy slept beside him, providing warmth and companionship. Each clip captured authenticity, honesty, and the bond that had grown between them. When uploaded online, the response was overwhelming. People were inspired, curious, and deeply moved. Comments flooded in. "This is pure love. I wish I could meet them. They remind me what hope looks like." It was during this period that Arib began to understand the concept of turning struggle into opportunity. Every day he had spent exhausted, hungry, and overlooked had not been wasted. The perseverance, resilience, and loyalty he had shown Buddy were qualities that others now saw and valued. He realized that his hardships had prepared him for this moment, to not just survive, but to thrive under pressure, to transform adversity into action. Then came the first real turning point. A small brand contacted him after seeing one of the videos. They wanted to collaborate, simple sponsorship at first, but it represented a new reality, a source of steady income. Arib was cautious, unsure if he was ready for attention, for responsibility, for change. But Buddy, ever patient and calm, nudged him forward, reminding him silently that this was their moment. With Buddy by his side, Arib agreed. The weeks that followed marked a subtle, yet profound transformation. What had begun as survival had begun to evolve into growth. People recognized him on the streets, often stopping to pat Buddy or ask how they were doing. Every small interaction reinforced that their story had meaning beyond the alleys and hardships. Arib no longer felt invisible. He had a purpose, a mission, and a growing community of people rooting for him. Late at night, under the dim light of a flickering street lamp, Arib reflected on everything that had happened. The boy who once feared each day, who had worried only about his next meal, now felt a cautious optimism. The dog that had been nothing more than a stray was now a symbol of hope, a partner in life, and a bridge to opportunities he could not have imagined. He whispered to Buddy, as he often did, "We've come a long way, and it's only the beginning." The dog's tail wagged softly as if agreeing, and Arib finally understood that the turning point had not been fame, donations, or sponsorship. It had been their bond. The choice to care, to persist, and to believe in each other had changed everything. For the first time, Arib felt the weight of the past lift slightly. The struggles hadn't ended, they would never completely end, but the path forward was clearer. The turning point wasn't just about recognition or money. It was about seeing that, even in a world that seemed indifferent, kindness, courage, and persistence could lead to life-changing opportunities. And for Arib and Buddy, that opportunity was just beginning to unfold. Months had passed since Arib first took Buddy under his care. The boy who had once wandered streets hungry, cold, and invisible had begun to carve a place for himself in the world. The bond between him and Buddy had only grown stronger. Every morning a ritual, every night a reminder of how far they had come. Life wasn't perfect. Hardship still arrived unannounced, but Arib had discovered something more valuable than perfection: resilience, purpose, and the quiet power of loyalty. The sponsorships that started as small collaborations grew into steady opportunities. People began following his journey, inspired not just by his survival, but by his heart. Arib began recording more intentionally, sharing stories of struggle, perseverance, and kindness. Every post, every video showcased Buddy, their bond, and the reality of turning compassion into opportunity. The world responded with enthusiasm. Donations grew, brands took notice, and slowly but surely, Arib began earning a steady income. What surprised him most was how success didn't feel like an abstract dream anymore. It felt tangible, yet deeply personal. Each paycheck, each small recognition carried the imprint of countless nights spent shivering under streetlights, countless days when hunger gnawed at his insides, and countless moments when Buddy had rested his paw on him as if to say, "We'll get through this." The dog had been more than a companion. Buddy had been a guide, a mentor, and a symbol of hope in Arib's life. Arib used the money wisely. He ensured Buddy received proper medical care, nutritious food, and even a small cozy bed to sleep in. For himself, he rented a modest room, a place that smelled faintly of sunlight and old wood, where both could finally rest without fear. But he never forgot the streets that had shaped him, the cold nights, and the hunger that had once defined his days. Every success he achieved was a tribute to that past, and to the dog who had walked beside him when no one else would. Even with financial stability, Arib stayed grounded. He knew the value of persistence, humility, and empathy. Each morning he walked the streets with Buddy, not to show off, but to remind himself of the journey they had endured. People recognized them now, some with smiles, some with cameras, and some simply nodding in silent acknowledgement. Each gesture reminded Arib that their story was bigger than survival. It was proof that compassion and determination could create change, not just for oneself, but for others too. One evening, as Arib watched the sun set, casting long golden rays over the city, he held Buddy close. Memories of their first encounter, the cracked sidewalks, the cold drizzle, the fear in both their eyes, flooded back. What had seemed impossible then was now reality. They had not only survived, they had transformed life itself. And yet, Arib knew the journey was never truly about fame or money. It was about the bond they shared, the lessons learned, and the lives they had touched along the way. He often reflected quietly, thinking about the boy he used to be, the one who felt invisible, powerless, and defeated. That boy could never have imagined the life he now lived. And Buddy, who had once been a trembling, injured stray, had become the cornerstone of that transformation. Arib realized that success wasn't measured solely by wealth or recognition. It was measured by loyalty, perseverance, and the courage to care when the world turned away. Finally, Arib whispered to Buddy, as he often did, "We did it, Buddy. We really did it." The dog nuzzled his face, tail wagging softly. Together they had not only survived, they had thrived. And in the quiet of that moment, under the fading sunlight, Arib understood the truth of their journey. Sometimes the paw print of a loyal companion is the first step toward finding your own path to success. Arib's story, intertwined with Buddy's, had become more than a tale of survival. It was a testament to the transformative power of compassion, persistence, and love. A reminder that sometimes the smallest, seemingly weakest presence in your life can lead you to the greatest victories. And as Arib closed his eyes that night, Buddy curled beside him. He finally felt what he had never felt before: complete, enduring